Welcome back to Beyond the Light Episode 3. And today we had the chance to talk to lead writer on 007 First Light, Michael Vogt. He will share a few insights on how we craft the story for the game.
My name is Michael Vogt. I am the main writer on 007 First Light, and I have been with IO for 14 years. The origin aspect was always central to the project vision. Since we meet Bond as a young man, the tone and the story world also needed to reflect his sort of youthful perspective. It's not a dark and gritty or cynical world. It's dangerous, to be sure, but it's fun and inviting and adventurous and ultimately hopeful. He's not jaded yet. So Bond is experiencing this hidden, exciting world of espionage for the very first time. Of course, we want to convey a sense of bright-eyed wonder here. There's this trope of the hero who walks away from explosions, right, because he's so cool. But the reason heroes walk away from explosions is because they've seen so many of them. But this is Bond's first outing, and he's 26 years old, so I think he's going to want to turn and watch that explosion. Many of the aspects that you associate with James Bond is already there as innate qualities. He's incredibly charming and charismatic, and he's audacious. He's very cool under pressure, and of course he's insanely capable and resourceful. And there's a ruthlessness to him when the situation requires it. Emotional distance, or at least a reluctance to deal with emotions. He's not the suave connoisseur either, who knows everything about champagne and wine and fancy cars. I think that will come with age and experience. But because he's a young guy, there are also some traits that we haven't really seen before. There's an innocence to him here. He's quite trusting and earnest and idealistic even. And traits that you sort of sense will probably not survive this job for long, even if he does. Belonging is definitely a theme in this story. He's a young man who hasn't found his place in the world or his purpose yet. What does it mean to be a 00 in this age, and does the world even still need them? Will heart and intuition even matter, or can technology just do everything better? So in that sense, the story reflects the times that we live in, which is also something that Bond stories have always done. So this youthful take also informs some of the gameplay choices that we make. For instance, we have a bluff mechanic, something Bond can do to get out of a tight spot, because we felt that that's exactly the sort of thing a young James Bond would do. Agent 47 in Hitman, he plans meticulously, but Bond is not somebody who plans meticulously. He's very impulsive. He just goes in and he wings it. When we start out in a pre-production, we make a story outline that looks pretty much like a feature film, only it's a little bit more elastic. Technically, you can say you structure it like a film. You make sure that the first half of the second act is very flexible, so you can make for a much longer running campaign while still preserving the tension curve towards the end of the story, towards the climax. The way I see it, as a game writer, you really have two toolboxes. Toolbox number one is the classic screenwriting craft, the time-honored method of structuring plots and creating character arcs and themes that resonate and kind of tying it all together into a meaningful experience. And then once you've done that, that's usually when you enter production, you go to toolbox number two, and that's the game writing craft. That's where you take that initial outline and then translate it somehow into an interactive experience. And throughout production, we work especially very closely with level designers in just designing the moment-to-moment story gameplay flow. Creating the story gameplay flow is a much more demanding task than simply writing a classic story outline, and it takes 50 times as long. As writers, we are schooled in classic storytelling. So in a way, you can say a linear story-driven action-adventure like First Light is actually closer to home than, say, a big, sprawling, non-linear, gameplay-driven beast like Hitman. So I don't think we actually, as a team, had to adapt that much. It's kind of within the comfort zone of what we're trained to do. The bigger challenge was to figure out how to make a forward momentum game while still preserving, the things that make an IOI game an IOI game. So the story is about how Bond becomes a 00. So we are going to put him on a trajectory, but we're not going to resolve the character in this game. I think To me, Bond is someone who clearly grows and evolves, but he's not somebody necessarily who changes fundamentally. Rather, he has some innate qualities that makes him an agent of change. He changes the world, right? He does that all the time. He has to have some inherent Bond qualities that are just there from the get-go. So we're definitely on this journey with him, and we see him mature in many kinds of ways. But the story is as much about how he changes MI6 and how he changes the characters around him. Bond has heart, and he's very tenacious, and he's willing to take risk, and that actually changes the way MI6 operates in an era that is otherwise kind of risk-averse and data-driven. Our Bond definitely leans more on other people than we're used to seeing. One, because he's not a seasoned agent yet and he's still learning the ropes, and also because games are fundamentally different from film in that players spend a long time alone on the sticks. So you do need that supporting cast to communicate story, really. So Bond has a number of strong relationships throughout the campaign, some known and some new, and they each kind of affect him in different ways and play a role in how he develops as a character. As a player, especially an IOI player, you want as much agency as possible, and we want to give it to them, obviously. At the same time, we do need players to feel like Bond at all time. In Hitman, you are kind of able to go spectacularly out of character at any given moment, but you can't really do that with Bond. That feels wrong. He's too established. So the way we approach choice is not about branching, it's about improvisation. So your Bond can be more of a brawler, or he can be clever and talk his way out of situations, or he can stealth around and use gadgets, and those are all valid choices. So we use choice as a way for players to feel clever and to think on their feet like a proper 00 agent, but without ever actually breaking character.
Afternoon, sir. Staff and press only.
Oh, damn. Forgot my press badge.
You're not the first.
You'll see sometimes in the game we're able to enter a dialogue tree with different characters. And the way we use it is, again, not about branching, but it's about that there's usually one option that's mandatory, and then the others are for world building. So it's simply about how interested are you in this world, in this situation, in these characters. Part of the creative approach is also eavesdropping, especially in a social arena. There are a lot of similarities we did in Hitman, where you have to listen in on conversations, to obtain hints, and unlock opportunities to solve a certain objective along the way. A good villain is someone who's thematically opposed to the main character. And it can be multiple people, obviously. You usually have 3 or 4 major or minor villains that challenge different aspects of the hero's character. Sometimes a great villain is also someone who's dark mirror, a mirror image of the hero. But I think that the thematic aspect is probably the most impactful, really, whose values and ideas are just diametrically opposed. A character like Bovma has a lot of contrast. On the one hand, he seems very volatile and ruthless, savage even, but he's also kind of a philosopher king. He's very thoughtful and eloquent. And ultimately, I think what makes him interesting and sympathetic is that he is someone who's really trying to build something from nothing. You have to respect that, even in a harsh environment. He's someone who thinks that the sky's the limit. We have some really great actors and a fantastic ensemble cast that hopefully players will really fall in love with. And of course, the story is clever and intriguing, and I'm very proud of it, but I do think games are more like TV series than film in the sense that it really is characters who drive engagement ultimately.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Beyond the Light, and if you have missed the first 2 episodes, don't worry, you can check them out on the channel, they are live here. And also, don't forget to pre-order the game if you haven't, because you can get a free deluxe upgrade for 007 First Light, releasing on May 27th. See you next time.
Agents have very short life expectancy. And if you do get caught, we will deny ever having heard of you. How does that sound?
When do I start?